A single Joy-Con controller costs Nintendo just a few dollars more to manufacture than a plastic remote control, yet it sells for $40 a pop, and people buy it anyway, in every color imaginable. That tiny gap between cost and price, repeated across millions of units, is one of the quiet secrets behind a company that Wall Street analysts have declared finished at least 4 separate times since the year 2000. Each time, Nintendo didn't just survive, it came back richer, stranger, and somehow more beloved than before. So how does a toy company from Kyoto keep out-earning tech giants with 10 times its research budget? Let's start with what Nintendo actually is, because most people get it wrong. It is not just a video game company. It is closer to Disney with joysticks. Nintendo owns characters like Mario, Zelda, and Pokémon the way Disney owns Mickey Mouse, and it guards them with the same obsessive protectiveness. While other gaming companies chase the latest graphics trend, Nintendo has spent decades building a universe of characters people fall in love with as children and never quite let go of as adults. That emotional grip is the real engine behind everything the company does. To understand the money, you first have to understand the strategy, and Nintendo's strategy is almost the opposite of its biggest rivals. Sony and Microsoft often sell their consoles at a loss, or barely breaking even, because they make their real money later from game sales and subscriptions. Nintendo does something different. It builds cheaper, less powerful hardware and sells it at a profit from day one. The Switch, for example, uses technology that was already a few years old when it launched in 2017. That sounds like a weakness. It turned out to be genius. Because the hardware was simple and inexpensive to produce, Nintendo could sell each console for a healthy margin instead of losing money on every unit. And by not chasing the newest, most expensive chips, they kept manufacturing costs low enough that even a slightly overpriced console still felt affordable to families. This single decision, cheap but clever hardware, is one of the quiet reasons Nintendo prints cash while competitors burn through billions trying to outspec each other. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Consoles are just the entry ticket. Once you own a Switch, you're standing inside Nintendo's carefully built toy store, and everything inside it is designed to get a little more money out of you. That starts with games. Where competitors' games often drop in price within months, Nintendo has built a reputation, an almost stubborn one, for never discounting its first-party titles. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe launched in 2017, and years later was still selling near full price. Most industries would call that bad customer service. Nintendo calls it a business model. And it works because the demand almost never dries up. Then there's the accessories. Joy-Con controllers, carrying cases, charging docks, and those adorable little amiibo figures that unlock extra content in games. Add them all together, and a family isn't just buying one $300 console. They're buying an entire ecosystem, piece by piece, almost without realizing how much they're spending. But if hardware and games were the whole story, Nintendo would just be a slightly smarter version of its competitors. The real secret weapon is something most casual fans never think about: intellectual property licensing. Every time a Super Mario Bros. Movie ticket gets sold, every time a plush Pikachu appears on a store shelf, every time someone buys a Lego set shaped like Bowser's Castle, Nintendo takes a cut. This is a business that realized decades ago that Mario doesn't need to stay inside a game cartridge. He can sell popcorn buckets, theme park tickets, and t-shirts, and Nintendo barely has to lift a finger once the licensing deal is signed. Speaking of theme parks, Super Nintendo World, built in partnership with Universal Studios, is basically a money printing machine disguised as a Mario-themed playground. Nintendo doesn't have to build or run the park. It simply licenses its characters and collects a steady stream of royalties while millions of tourists line up to buy interactive wristbands, character hats, and overpriced mushroom shaped snacks. It's the ultimate lazy genius move. Let someone else handle the roller coasters and crowd control while you cash the check. Now let's talk numbers, because this is where the story stops sounding like folklore and starts sounding like a financial thriller. In its fiscal year ending March 2024, Nintendo reported operating profit of roughly 528 billion yen, close to $3.5 billion, on revenue of about 1.67 trillion yen. That's a profit margin most tech companies would kill for, and it came almost entirely from a console that was already 7 years old at the time, still outselling brand new, far more powerful machines from Sony and Microsoft. Let that sink in for a moment. A 7-year-old piece of hardware, built on purposely modest technology, was still one of the best-selling consoles on the planet. Now let's talk about the part that would make any accountant smile: costs. Compared to its rivals, Nintendo spends surprisingly little chasing raw processing power. Sony and Microsoft pour enormous sums into 4K graphics and lightning-fast chips. Nintendo, famously, refuses to join that race. Its philosophy, credited to legendary designer Gunpei Yokoi, is called lateral thinking with withered technology. Picture an inventor walking past a warehouse full of last year's leftover parts, the ones every other company considers junk, and building something magical out of them simply because they're cheap, reliable, and nobody else wants them. That's the whole idea in one image. Take old, well-understood, unglamorous technology and use it in a way nobody expected. It sounds almost too simple to work. It has quietly saved the company billions. Of course, no strategy is without cracks, and Nintendo has a few worth mentioning. Piracy and emulation have haunted the company for years, cutting into potential game sales in ways that are notoriously hard to measure. Nintendo has responded, sometimes controversially, by suing emulator creators, shutting down fan projects, and even pursuing legal action against small YouTubers. It's the price of protecting characters worth billions, even if it occasionally makes the company look like the strict parent at the birthday party who won't let anyone touch the cake. There's also the constant risk of a single bad hardware generation. Remember the Wii U? It sold barely 13 million units over its lifetime, a disaster compared to the Wii's more than 100 million. Confusing marketing made shoppers think it was just an accessory for the original Wii, rather than a brand new console entirely. That single mistake nearly derailed the company's momentum. But here's the twist that makes this story so satisfying. That same company, fresh off the Wii U embarrassment, turned around and built the Switch, one of the best-selling consoles in history, moving past 130 million units. Not because the technology was groundbreaking, because the idea was. A console you could play on your TV, then simply pull out of its dock and take on a train, a plane, or a couch across the room. It's proof that Nintendo's business isn't really about any single piece of hardware. It's about timing, characters, and the willingness to learn fast from expensive mistakes.
Let's talk psychology for a moment, because that's really what's happening underneath all these numbers. Nintendo sells nostalgia disguised as new products. Adults who grew up jumping on Goombas in the 1990s aren't just buying a game for their kids. They're buying back a piece of their own childhood. That emotional pull is worth more than any graphics card. And it's the reason parents will pay full price for a Mario game, while happily grabbing a discounted shooter from a rival brand sitting right next to it on the shelf. Mistakes have happened along the way. Plenty of them. Underestimating online infrastructure for years left Nintendo's internet services feeling clunky compared to competitors, something they only recently started fixing. Being slow to enter mobile gaming meant missing out on early profits from smartphone users, even though titles like Pokémon Go eventually became massive hits once they finally leaned in. And their stubborn resistance to backward compatibility across console generations has frustrated fans who feel like they're repurchasing the same games every few years, just in a different box. Yet even with these missteps, the bigger picture tells a story of remarkable resilience. Every time critics wrote Nintendo's obituary, the company quietly rebuilt, adjusted its formula, and came back with something the world didn't know it wanted. The DS. The Wii, the Switch, each one seemed like a gamble at launch. Each one became a phenomenon that redefined how people play games. And each one made the doubters from a few years earlier look a little foolish. So how does Nintendo make money? Not by outspending anyone, not by winning the horsepower race. It makes money by owning unforgettable characters, selling affordable but clever hardware, refusing to discount its best games, and turning nostalgia into a business model that spans movies, theme parks, and toy aisles. It's a company that seems to break every modern rule of the tech industry, and somehow keeps winning anyway, one modest, 7-year-old console at a time. Maybe that's the real lesson hiding inside this quirky, plumber-powered empire. In an industry obsessed with the newest, fastest, shiniest thing, the smartest business move might be refusing to chase any of it, and trusting people to fall in love with what already works, again and again and again.